Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Guest today, Camille Zenobia. Camille, it's great to have you on. Please tell us where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Osacare.
Well, I'm calling in from New Jersey, just not too far out from Manhattan, but enough to be rural and get a little bit of country sites in here. What is it that I do? Well, I just started an oral care company just a couple years ago. We just launched last September, mainly D2C on socials, and looking to expand into the boutique setting before kind of reaching into more of maybe a whole food space type of thing.
That's awesome. So can you expand on that a little bit? Obviously, you started online, so you started direct to consumer there. You said you're getting into boutiques. Can you kind of expand on that? What kind of boutiques do you think are going to be a good fit for the line of products that I'm looking at on the website here?
Just places that curate natural, effective, skincare, oral care, personal care products that are really aimed and targeted toward the beauty consumer who is concerned about ingredient profile and ethics behind their brands.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I assume that's kind of your, customer profile for, what kind of marketing messages you're sending out and doing your D2C through the site as well. That's awesome. So, and then I was taking a look at your LinkedIn before, obviously pretty impressive resume. So I just want to hear a little bit about, your background leading up to, obviously you had some pretty, impressive things on your LinkedIn there. What kind of caused you to want to, go out on your own and create a brand all yourself? Like what kind of problems did you see out there in the market that you think, weren't being catered to or weren't being solved that, caused you to create this brand?
Well, First, my background is quite unusual in that I started as a hairdresser first. And so that's kind of where I cut my teeth on customer service and personal care, really getting into understanding the beauty consumer. But also I ended up in a Veda salon. So I was a trainer for Aveda, a part of their professional program, where they basically initially flew me in twice a year so that I could learn from the scientists what their products were doing for the benefit of our customers. And that was really when I started to fall in love with chemistry. So I went and got an undergraduate in chemistry while I was, I had a couple salon spas in the Seattle area. And from there, I still wanted to do more. So I went to graduate school for microbiology. I got a PhD working in host microbiome relationship, mostly on the immune side. I went to a postdoc at University of Pennsylvania for a couple of years, and then I expanded into industry where I ended up landing all of my research in the oral cavity. So I was looking at host microbiome interactions in the mouth and understanding the tissue turnover process. So I ended up at Colgate-Palmolive working on the bench, understanding kind of creating news stories for their technology, looking at ways we could understand more fully what was happening on both sides of that equation. And I ended up moving within the company to clinical development. And at that point, I felt like I had kind of reached my limit because it's really hard to create new technologies at Colgate.
Right.
They're a historic brand for a reason. So anyway, I went back to kind of my pharmaceutical beginnings, really loving that host pathogen interaction, going back into HIV, which I had done some research in. But that was during the pandemic, so it was a really hard go working with physicians in the field. But anyway, what I had discovered during my oral health research was that a lot of our interventions are antimicrobial by nature, and a lot of the excipients in those products create a level of irritation. But some of the research that I had been privy to and participated in showed that if you could control the inflammation, the microbiome would come back to normal, or a balance, I should say. You're kind of helping that ecological system come back to its homeostasis. So understanding those inflammatory pathways, I really kind of dove into what it would take to correct ongoing inflammation, and that's been very well described. So I was looking for technology that would turn that situation upside down and like bring it back to normal levels. And I identified a drug that we use in lab. And it just happens that it looks a lot like vitamin B3, which is niacinamide. And it's a well-used product in skincare. People who use skincare really understand the technology. Nobody's ever put it in their mouths before. Why? Because it's bitter. But in the dish, it looks really provocative. You can really correct the situation if you take the immune cells from the saliva from people who have disease and treat it with this compound. You get a reversal of those inflammatory profiles. And so I really wanted to make an oral care that was really effective, but I positioned it in the beauty space mainly because the active is so familiar in that space and it made a lot of sense. And also in the oral cavity, if you have ongoing inflammation, it's going to erode your facial bones like your jaw, which is why you end up losing teeth. But that can affect your physiology too, your facial aesthetics. So that's kind of why the beauty positioning is really relevant for this product line.
Yeah, no, that's actually fascinating. And so what you're saying basically is that the inflammation is basically the catalyst for a host of other problems that are being treated themselves, but the underlying condition is actually the inflammation that isn't traditionally being treated by more traditional products that are out there on the market.
Exactly.
That's actually fascinating because I mean, I think anybody who has, problems with, no oral issues, I mean, that's pretty typical. Like you just kind of, and probably other kind of like areas too, is like you treat for the symptoms, not treating for the underlying condition.
Exactly.
So that's really fascinating. I appreciate you sharing that. And then you have this this vitamin B3. I'm actually not familiar with it, but I will say my skincare routine is probably a little lacking than maybe somebody who's a little bit more privy to a routine like that. But so tell me a little bit more about how that works. Well, what is a traditional use for a vitamin B3 in a skincare supplement and or a skincare topical cream or something? And then how does that kind of work in the drugs and the products that you've created?
So on skin, there's a variety of mechanisms. It can induce antimicrobial peptides that we make naturally on our skin, so it can enhance those. And we think that possibly it would be doing that in the mouth too. On topically, it is reducing inflammation, so you'll get a decrease in redness. It also acts as a lightener, so it brightens your skin. So those are kind of the three main functions that you would see in skincare. In the mouth, it's quite different. The action that I am seeking has everything to do with the white blood cells that survey the landscape in the mouth. So we have these crevices between our teeth that have this really thick microbial community. And so the white blood cells come in through these crevices to make sure that there's not too many bacteria there. So it's really this balancing act. And if the wrong bacteria are there, too many, these white blood cells can get really angry and basically act like bombs. And that devastation, if it's not turned off at some point, it goes chronic, and then you have gingivitis, and it can escalate into periodontal disease. So if you can induce that white blood cell to go to sleep, basically, we call it apoptosis, a quiet apoptosis where it's not exploding like a bomb, then you induce wound healing. And when you get that wound healing cascade, you get all of the cleanup involved. And so you're bringing that tissue back to balance. So the goal is just to get that white blood cell to quiet down. And that is the activity that we see it doing in the mouth.
It really is fascinating. So it's like an overactivity of your body's natural process, just kind of like in perpetuity. That's just like it's actually causing damage rather than fixing the problem it's seeking to solve. Wow, that's really fascinating. And I know you mentioned, most of the time people don't like to put it in their mouth because it's very bitter. So how have you kind of grappled with that in making a product that people are going to be putting into their mouth?
Well, I have a co-founder, and her brilliance is flavor,
Nice.
specifically
Awesome.
in the oral care products. So she came in and really finessed that formula, made it beautiful. It sparkles. It's all natural. Tastes good. I prefer not mint. Probably opposite of most US citizens will say, but I decided to launch with citrus blossom, which is a very mild citrus floral bouquet, if you will. But we do have a mint SKU coming for other people, and it is also very mild. All of the kind of flavor and formula profile is meant to be non-irritant. So I didn't want to go with a huge flavor package. It's meant to be mild and not irritating. So
That's amazing. So how does something like this stack up to like your everyday typical, kind of mouthwash? I mean, somebody who's not privy to this kind of information of like what's even in their mouthwash or like, what vitamin B3 can do for, as like an oral topical treatment for a problem like this. I mean, well, what's like the key differences between, this type of a product and your more typical, maybe like alcohol-based mouthwash?
Well, the alcohol-based mouthwashes and something like Listerine, which has an essential oil package, I call that essential oil, but it's a little bit different in that it's a highly processed flavor profile that is antibacterial by nature. And so both the alcohol and antibacterial products have been shown to really reduce the microbiome. It's true, but apparently to some detriment. So more recently, some studies have come out to show that people who are verging on pre-diabetic, if they use over-the-counter mouthwash, they will turn to diabetic with more frequency. People who are using chlorhexidine, it's been shown that they have higher mortality in the hospital, more cardiovascular disease events. So we're starting to kind of walk back the anti-bac experience in oral care, but that's traditionally what all of our hygiene products are based on. So it's a tricky situation because we still want to clean our mouths.
Right. So would you say something like, this vitamin B3 based product that you're offering could be used kind of like in tandem with, something like a more typical mouthwash, or is it like a straight up replacement, better option than maybe some of the more traditional things that are out there?
Well, I wouldn't recommend using any mouthwash that has an anti-bac active or any alcohol whatsoever. So I have seen some, probiotic mouthwashes out there. I really don't know their efficacy. I was going really specifically towards the inflammation, so I haven't seen a lot try to address that issue. So this would be a full replacement. So we have a toothpaste and a mouth serum, and that mouth serum also has hyaluronin, which is hyaluronic acid, basically. It's hydrating. It also soothes inflammation, but it helps deliver that niacinamide as well. So all of that kind of aims to soothe and regenerate the tissues.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that. I have one more kind of just product question because I'm so curious.
Yeah.
Then I want to ask you some questions about the more kind of like general business strategy kind of side of things. But curious, like these types of either the second product that you just mentioned and the original B3 based product, are they quite viscous, kind of like your typical mouthwash is, or is like is the profile and like viscosity of it a little bit different, or how does it kind of compare to like something like a mouthwash? I mean, it's essentially like just like kind of feels like water.
The mouth serum has a little bit of viscosity. I
Mm-hmm.
really didn't want it to feel like additional spit in your mouth, so it's
Right.
not quite that thick, but it does definitely have a coating feeling that is quite pleasant and light. The toothpaste is a clear gel formula with a little bit of a pink hue for the citrus blossom and a little bit of a blue hue for the mint, but it is, I would say, like a gel, a firm gel.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate you sharing that because it is really fascinating. I don't think it's like talked enough in just like popular sentiment, like oral care, like maybe your skin care is, or even like hair care is obviously just like a topic, endless conversation, endless new ideas and trends. I think some of the like, the big players like the Colgate-Palmolives of the world, I mean, they've just kind of been like everything in that space forever up until like very recently with things like what you're doing. So, no, I really appreciate that. And I guess I'm curious, I know you mentioned you started D2C or looking to maybe get into some boutiques. So on the D2C channel where you started, I mean, what's your like general marketing strategy as far as messaging and, things like this, obviously, I guess we'll just start with a singular thing, I suppose. On that side of things, I mean, what is your general kind of plan with your marketing messaging, and who do you see as your kind of ideal customer? Obviously, I know you mentioned somebody who cares about the ingredients of what they're putting into their mouth, or just into their bodies in general. Do you find any kind of specific like demographic or psychographic of folks that are buying D2C from you right now?
Well, we did a lot of, I would maybe not a lot, but we did some testing prior to launch to understand how to message this very nuanced conversation. So I'm basically, really hitting hard on that facial beauty from the inside because it's really true in nature. But I think it does resonate with people who are beauty conscious, ingredient aware, and there's an entire kind of anti-aging, or rather like wellness and fit for life type of behavior that we're seeing in both men and women. So I've been surprised that in our demographics, people who are interested in our message as we kind of of test these ways of speaking to these consumers that I think our last campaign, about 40% of the interested parties were men. And I think that speaks to that kind of wellness, fitness, healthy lifestyle where they're really looking at ingredients, trying to reduce their toxicity and maintain, a sense of balance from head to toe with supplements. And so a lot of our consumers do resonate with the non-fluoride approach and the less irritants.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I guess I'm curious as well, what kind of what could you just find like more specific age range? Is it kind of older, like older millennials or more into like the 40, 50 age range? Did you have you found anything about that in that kind of category as far as data goes with, the testing that you've done?
Yeah, I would say that like 35 to 55 is kind of our sweet spot. We do have some outliers, and we're still examining those because I don't think we have quite enough data to understand where we sit.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so you kind of take the angle of rather than kind of market it or do messaging more about a specific like it's like a solution to a specific problem. It's really just more of like a holistic part of your everyday routine, holistic
Exactly.
like beauty from within sort of. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, especially since you're using an ingredient that could be actively compared to the B3s that are in so many popular topical skincare creams. So that definitely makes sense. And as you think about venturing out into these boutique stores and maybe doing like a wholesale if a good opportunity comes along. I know you mentioned Whole Foods. Is that kind of like in an ideal world where you would like to land, do you think, as with like a main retailer or grocer, or is that just kind of like an example?
It's an example.
Mhm.
Honestly, I would prefer to be in Target. I think they've done a really nice job expanding their skincare area and making it this whole experience. The part that I am reluctant to involve myself with Target is because they have yet to do that for the oral care. And I
Mm.
refuse to sit with detergent with my beauty proposition. So I
Yeah,
would
no,
like to see a lot of change before that happens.
yeah, no, it's fair enough, and it's funny you mentioned that because I actually just had kind of noticed that recently the last time I was there, but they had like somebody working in the like beauty department, like they do kind of like in your Macy's or something, and they
Yes,
have seemed to have like really doubled down in that area. So I could see that happening in the future. So yeah, I know I can definitely see that. And so, what kind of conversations have you had, working with these boutiques? I mean, are you looking to do anything as far as like sampling within these boutiques? I know it's a big thing that like a lot of CPG brands will do in grocers. They'll have like a like a some kind of like testing like station little thing set up. Is that something you're looking to get involved in as you make your way into kind of these boutique stores and things like that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. First, because we just launched in September, we are still doing small batch in a small lab. So we just engaged a manufacturer. It's been this ongoing laborious process, like everything else in a startup life, but it looks like they're ready to roll now. And so we have that rolling while we do our first media splash, which we have partnered with a marketing company that is collaborating with kind of a mid to high level influencer who has a lot of reach in the kind of wellness space. And so it will go on Syndicate TV as well as Times Square and have some press releases. So we're looking forward to see what kind of activity that delivers. So we're still very small and again, always looking for funding. So as we roll that out, trying to tap for funding as we show growth. That's kind of our aim.
Yeah, for sure. I know that's one question I always love to ask everybody that comes on the podcast is a very common answer I get to it is around funding here in 2024 is the question I always love to ask is, even a company as young as yours with, I know it's been a couple of years for you, maybe just a little under, I think you said. So even still, like, learning everything you've learned about this process. I mean, you obviously know a lot about this, industry on the scientific side,
Mhm.
given your career, everything you've learned and, about running a business and, what it takes to really operate a startup and all those types of things. If you could give yourself one piece of advice, you would go back a couple of years to the onset of the brand. What do you think that piece of advice would be? Personal, business, could be anything.
That's a great question. I've learned so much. I would say that the saying to fail often, faster and often is is a great one, but I don't think you really take that home until you've been through a couple enduring failures
Right.
to really understand what exactly and how that looks in practice. And then, taking risks is hard for anyone, but I would say that I probably dragged my feet on this project longer than I needed to. So I acquired a really great advisory team, and it keeps me, I feel like realistic, but also they game me to really put myself out there and take the risks that I need to make the next level. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate them. And
Yeah.
I would say to anyone, whatever it takes, get yourself some really good advisors.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And that's definitely another common answer I get to that question is, don't try to do everything yourself. Like,
No.
do it until you can, but then, when you need the external help, like, don't be over wary. Like, take the time to find good people, but don't be afraid to delegate parts of your process, even though, like, maybe it's your first brand, it's your baby, you want to like have full control over everything.
Yes.
You could still have control and have people help out and with your vision once you find the right partners who can kind of like resonate with that, and just have parts of the process going through other folks that really understand your vision and can do those types of tasks in a way that you would yourself. So I think that's really good advice. I appreciate that. And I guess the last thing, I just want to give you an opportunity. Anybody who listens to the podcast, they want to maybe get in touch with you, partner with you. Get in touch with you and keep just keep tabs on the product, see where they can find it, where you're releasing, or maybe even order from the website. So let everybody know what's the best way to keep in touch with you personally and with the brand itself.
Well, my website is osacare.com. That's where you would find my products. And of course, there's an about page with lots of links to me and my co-founder. I'm also on LinkedIn, Camille Zenobia, and I'm also on Instagram, both Osacare, but also oral health activist. So that's my nerd page. It's not pretty. It is
Love that.
messy with my thoughts and occasional weird pictures of me.
That's also, I think people kind of love that kind of stuff though. Like so much like new like social media for like younger brands is just like the over transparency. I think people really resonate with that. So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, Camille, I just want to say thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate your time and your insights. What you're doing is really fascinating. I'm certainly super interested in it. I would love to try it. So that was a great conversation. Again, I really appreciate your time and I wish you nothing but a continued success.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll get you some product.
That would be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Camille.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.